Good evening and welcome to Rap Live. We are here courtesy of the Nottingham Trent University curated and created programme, and we're here tonight with the fantastic blogger, football blogger, journalist, writer, man and legend, writer of children's books. The list is endless. Which Musa have we got with us this evening? We're going to find out.
All of them.
All of them, yeah. Fantastic. For a conversation and a reading and a question for time for question and answer. So let's give Musa a very warm welcome. We're here live at Metronome in the heart of the city, and it's fantastic to see so many people out and about. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming out this evening. It's really great to see everyone. Fantastic. So, Musa, welcome. Have you been to Nottingham before?
First, I was here about 20 years ago.
Right.
My mum was doing house calls. She's a GP. So she was visiting different houses as a doctor around Christmas. So I basically sat in the car with her at like 2 a.m. just to keep her company while she was basically visiting houses around Nottingham.
Wow.
That's the first time I was here. Yeah.
And how
Great
are
to be back.
What have you seen this afternoon?
So Anne very kindly showed me around. The architecture is beautiful. So what I love about Nottingham, it's very similar to, I was saying to Steve as well, shout out to Steve who's in the crowd somewhere. It's like Norwich in the sense that it combines old and new architecture really, really well. And there are some towns where you get off the train, you have like an instant warmth. I think Cheltenham's like that, Sheffield's like that, and Nottingham's definitely like that. Like places you just get off the train, you're like, wow, like you see the tram, you go down the sort of hill, and there's that vibe. Like I live in Berlin, so I'm a complete sucker for trams. And the way that the uni is integrated so well into city life, the way the architecture is so beautiful, the way that everything is like, all the buildings are kind of like in conversation with each other, which is really special. So yeah, like I'm a big fan.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Can I just say I'm really flattered by the turnout, so thank you. It's good for the ego. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have you back. So I thought, just picking up that idea that you've got many talents and many areas that you've been working across. So you've got your Stadio podcast, you've got your football writing, and journalism, you've got the writing for children, you've got poetry, there is your fantastic novel, In the End, comma, It Was All About Love. The comma's very important.
Very important.
Very important. Yeah. And also your memoir about your time at Eton, one of them. So I was struck by the fact that there was you started with the football writing and with Stadio, and then it was kind of like when I looked at the chronology of your work, there was a break for a while, and then like buses, 3 books came along at once.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pick up about your writing journey, really. Was it a choice to diversify like that, or is it something? Have you taken the opportunities as they come? What's your own writing journey been like?
Okay, I suppose the best thing to do is who here in the audience enjoys cooking? Hands up, who enjoys cooking? Right. This analogy will work. So it's like you're cooking right different elements of a meal, and you need to keep everything kind of like bubbling at roughly the same time, right? And that's what my writing career has been like, my artistic career. And that's why some people who've just done one thing have gone a lot farther, a lot further, a lot quicker. Because I was like, I never want to be the best at anything, because who can be the best writer? What does that even mean? Who can be the best poet? What does that mean? I said, I want to do 5 or 6 things well enough, but by the end of my career, if there's a room of like 1,000 people, and I'm in each of like one of 6 rooms, if you walk into any one of those 6 rooms, we're like, yeah, he belongs here. That was always the aim. So to be like one of the best football writers, one of the best poets, performance poets, one of the best political commentators, never to be the best, because again, what does that mean? But just to be like, that guy is of the highest standard he could reach. And so the reason why it took so long to break through, I think, is partly because of rejection. As many artists in the crowd will know about rejection. We get rejected far more than we get accepted, whatever acceptance means, right? Years of playing festivals as a musician, electronic music projects, have my own label, did my own. So actually, Steve, shout out to Steve here. Steve's been listening to my stuff the last, I think, 11, 12 years, basically. So there's all these different things where if you just do one thing in your career, you shoot up faster. If you just write screenplays, you'll get further faster. But I wanted to be someone that did lots of things. But the reason, so last year, like 3 books came out in a pandemic, so I had no book launches. So the greatest years of my career were spent behind closed doors. But I didn't mind that because actually the really good thing was a long time ago, Becky, I'd stopped looking for the validation of prizes. This is the beauty about being an artist who takes a very long time to get what they want. Other people, not other people, but prizes don't matter so much. Acclaim from institutions, it just becomes about the work.
Okay.
So that's why it took so long to get here.
That wasn't my question. I wasn't.
Well, no, but that's kind of like, I just thought I'd,
Yeah, thank you. Well, should we start off with in sport then?
Yeah, sure.
Proud footballing city. So I know in the audience we have Nottingham Forest fans, I can see, Notts County fans, and also Mansfield Town fan. Yes, thank you very much. Hello. So I was going to ask, because reading one of them and reading In the End It Was All About Love, it's so clear what a passion football is to you, and also clear what a formative experience it was.
Yeah.
So, and I know that you have played football and cricket and basketball as well. So I was going to ask, what do you think about sport and character? Is there a way that sport is not a dichotomy? You don't have to be intellectual or sporty. Is there some way that sport is empowering, do you think?
I think, first of all, let me say I'm very lucky to have been able-bodied for my entire sporting career. I'm very lucky to have avoided a serious sporting injury. I never had, the worst I ever had was a meniscus tear. And when I got that, I was like, it's time to give up, because the meniscus is a dangerous thing to be tearing when you're like in your late 30s. So I just want to qualify that by saying I was very lucky to be able-bodied for the whole of my sporting career. But what I think sport is amazing for is the stories it allows you to tell about yourself and the redemption it allows you to give you. So like, you lose a game of basketball, lose a game of cricket, you can say, well, how did I perform? How did I equip myself? Yes, we got beaten by 10 wickets, but I did my best, I bowled my best. Yes, we got beaten 4-0, but I never shirked a challenge. I never hid. It's interesting because I look back at the greatest games I was playing in or whatever, amateur level, some of them are defeats. And they would, so my local team in Berlin, for example, we started playing. We had a brilliant team this year, my first year in Berlin. I was 37, never thought I'd be playing at that level. We're the level below the amateur league in Berlin, that first amateur division, which is really high in Germany. It's a good level. We got beaten 10-2 in our second game, destroyed by this team, International, Vietnamese heritage, German kids, killed us. And the thing that I'm proud of is I never gave up. We lost 10-2. I scored my first goal in that game. We never gave up. And I went in at the end. And I've been in the team for 3 games. And I hammered them. I was like, in my very English, polite way. And I said, look, we can lose 10-2, but we can't give up. And that was the turning point in our season in terms of building character, because it built community. We sat there. It was humiliating. The next time we played them, we lost 2-1. And we finished second to them in the league on goal difference, and we got promoted in a playoff to the highest division in Germany. At the age of 37, I was playing as a number 9. And in terms of character and community, this team was anti-racist, anti-transphobia, anti-fascist, pro-feminist. In terms of what football teaches you on and off the field about community and acceptance, it's one of the great loves of my life.
Oh.
So yeah, that's the story.
So that was an involuntary,
Sorry.
Sorry. Because the next question was, why are you in love with football? So you've answered the question.
Yeah, but my family, also before I forget, my grandfather was the head of the Ugandan Football Association.
Right.
So football's been my family for forever, really.
Yeah,
yeah.
Part of your heritage.
Yeah, heritage, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So your first book was about, called A Cultured Left Foot.
Yes.
Was about the characteristics of the ideal footballer.
Yeah.
And your second book, Will You Manage, was about the characteristics of an ideal manager.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you what you think the characteristics of an ideal team might be.
The ideal team. Okay, so I know some countries the captain isn't so important. It's, right, in England it's super important, the captain. Now, the great captains I've played for have never been the best footballers on the team. It's weird, right? They've never been the best footballer, but they've always embodied the ethos of the team. So the most important thing with any great team is identity, right? What do you stand for, I think? And not just on the pitch in terms of a style of play. I don't just mean like Man City playing without a striker, which is gorgeous to watch. I mean like, what do you represent? When you go on the field, who are you playing for? What communities do you represent? So the most important thing with it is identity. And then I think the next most important thing is your commitment to that identity, your inclusivity. Like I'm very unashamedly in my politics. I'm, you know, progressive, left, whatever they call it these days. And then I think there needs to be an element of the word fun or joy is controversial, but there needs to be joy. What are you doing it for? If you're having a family, right, it's grim to bring up, you know, kids in a society who doesn't always support children, but like, if you're not going to have joy with your children, why have them? And I think the same with the team. Like, so I say identity, commitment to identity, and joy are the three most important things. Everything else comes later. Skill, tactics, yes, but you can work on those. If you have those basics, then you're fine.
So which teams do you think are particularly joyful, Musa?
Oh, I think Senegal. Senegal win the African Nations Cup. We're actually a goal up tonight against Egypt in the qualifier. I think Senegal will certainly leap out. I would say the new Barcelona under Xavi at the moment, the men's team. Barcelona women's team. Who's watched Barcelona women this year? Who's watched them? Oh my goodness. The best team on the planet. The best, right, that team is doing things I have not. It's a supernatural football team. Yes, the Barcelona women football team, the men and women, because they embody something bigger than, they're almost like when you watch Barcelona women in particular, it's like they're making a demonstration. It's like they're saying, we're not playing for now, we're playing for 50 years from now. So that when you watch them, you'd be like, oh, there went greatness. So yeah.
Have you got a player of players?
Oh, Leo Messi. Leo Messi is the greatest player that ever played football. My own personal favourite, my hero, is George Weah. Because was the first ever African footballer to be, well, first ever player to be simultaneously African, European, and World Footballer of the Year, and also did it in the mid-1990s as a dark-skinned black man in mainland Europe, which is a big deal. So, yeah.
Are you looking forward to Ashley Hickson-Loven's book about Uriah Rennie? Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it, yes.
Yeah.
I think I was sent an email about a press release. So
Yeah.
Uriah Rennie, like, brilliant black referee. The stories he would have to tell are unreal.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that. Hasn't Ashley taught here before?
He has, yeah. He was one of our featured writers, but I think it's the launch of his book this week, and also his first baby is due.
Oh, wow.
Quite an achievement.
Two big publications.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, massive creative endeavours.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. I was going to touch on as well the idea of business and football, and this feeling that sometimes you get when you look at transfer fees and the massive financial power of clubs, that maybe the players are like real life Subbuteo players sometimes. You know,
yeah.
they're kind of clicked around by rich owners. What do you think is there anything that you think needs to change in terms of the financial structures that are in place?
I worry sometimes in football because the biggest players they trade clubs for so much money. I worry that makes us lose empathy for the Notts County player and the Nottingham Forest player. I worry about that a lot because people see those huge salaries and they forget that actually the average footballer is basically like, I suppose, like a middle class household. If you think about it, right? You know, 3 kids, mortgage. And the difference is, like, you can be a middle class household, like a Mansfield Town player, for example, right? You leave football the age of 34, 35, you haven't earned enough to retire on that. You haven't, as a Mansfield Town player. You go back into the job market and you have to have been working on a skill that will sustain you beyond the end of your career. So you will have given entertainment as a Mansfield Town player to thousands of fans. At the age of 34, unless you're super famous, people aren't going to recognize you 5 years from now. So it's I really worry that the inequalities in football create a lack of empathy for the structures further down. So my main thing, if I had power tomorrow, if I seized power tomorrow in a bloodless coup, We don't do violence here. A bloodless coup. I would work on redistribution down the football pyramid, because I think that we can have our cake and eat it. There's so much money in English football at the moment that we can finance clubs like Macclesfield, Stop Me Going to the Wall, Notts County, historically great clubs, set up some really cool friendlies with like the Juventus example, and just bring a bit more kind of joy and glamour back. You look at the FA Cup, how everyone gets so excited by Nottingham Forest playing Liverpool, which they should have won, and think we could have that energy more than just once or twice every few years. We could have that energy every few months if we wanted to.
Yeah, the impact that's had on the city is quite amazing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We could have that more often. Yeah. Yep.
So I think I've successfully navigated the football part of the interview.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible. Great job.
So I was going to ask whether you would like to share some of your writing with us at this point.
I would love to. I'd love to. How many poets are there in the audience? Who reads or listens to poetry? Hands up. It's a decent number. But I'm not sure I'll start with a poem, because poetry is still quite... Actually, start the poem? Actually, why not? Why not? Okay, so I live in Berlin. I've been there for 8 years now. And there's a thing, sort of psychogeography, which is basically like certain places have a spirit, like the spirit of a city. So, for example, Nottingham psychogeography, the energy of it is very powerful. A city isn't just its buildings, it's the spiritual energy that comes out of the buildings. And I thought of Berlin, because there's so much history there. I thought, what if the history in Berlin is so rich that it started to inhabit the actual air within the city? So I wrote this poem called Righteous Migrants to open this book. And the poem is basically about what happened to the wind that blew the slave ships long after the slave ships were scrapped. It goes like this. What happened to the winds that sent the slave ships? Some of these gusts are proud that they filled those ancient sails. You could hear them above Berlin on election night, hailing the arrival of the moonlight and the far right. You could hear them whistling through the corridors of the Holocaust Memorial, slapping its stone walls and floors, gasping applause. What happened to the winds that sent the slave ships? Some of these breezes, still thick with guilt, now speed refugees towards Europe. Impatient to atone, they toss yet more dark bodies into the foam. What happened to the winds that sent the slave ships? Some of this air is in the best of health, since it has forgiven itself. I was simply swept along by the prevailing mood. There was nothing I could do. What happened to the winds that sent the slave ships? Some of these hurricanes remain enraged. You can hear them in the chests of activists who stand across from fascists in Spandau. They are the howls of every African child, woman, and man drowned. These winds have always resisted, with every major and minor breath, whether forming storms that left the slavish ship a wreck, or sending mischievous wafts to blow the hats from masters' heads. What happened to the winds that sent the slave ships? None of them have retired. They have migrated to Germany in their millions, and you can find the righteous ones whispering through its capital city at weekends, slipping through a window to cool a queer couple after a long afternoon of love, or sighing across the barbecues at Tempelhofer Feld, content there is still a world that knows how freedom smells. And the last, thank you. Thank you. And the other reading I want to do is, if I can find it, it's about cake. Who eats cake? Who likes cake here? Amazing. Low barrier to entry. Always the key to a good reading. So this segment, actually, before we go any further, how many people listen to the football podcast, Stadio? Who listens to it? Is Ed here? Ed Dutton, is Ed here? He didn't make it. Oh, you made it. Yeah, I saw you. I was traveling, but I'll see you afterwards. Thank you for listening, by the way. I really appreciate it. So this other reading, last reading, because it's slightly longer, is called How to Eat Cake in Berlin. So if you're interested in cake and going to Berlin and eating cake in Berlin, then these are two of my happy places. So yeah, How to Eat Cake in Berlin. The best time to eat cake in Berlin is a weekday afternoon, say 2 p.m. on a Thursday. You can't do it much earlier because you will not have earned it. You have to get the timing just right. If you get to the cafe for 3 p.m., then, when you finish, you will emerge into a swarm of angry and homeward-bound commuters. The best place to eat cake, well, that varies. It depends what you're looking for. If you want to go somewhere where you can pass out after the arrival of the sugar rush, then there's that quiet spot in a neighborhood, the one where the atmosphere is almost supernaturally gentle, where, even when it was full and busy one evening, you were still able to write a short story without being distracted. That's the same cafe which has a dog who seems to spend 95% of his time in a state of hibernation, slumped on a shelf just behind the bar, and who only wakes up when another dog enters his realm. Then he is almost on his hind legs with fury and will not stop roaring until the door closes behind the startled and rapidly retreating invader. That is also the cafe where the toddler babbles at you in Spanish and tries to impress you by holding up a series of nearby objects, waiting until you nod in approval before presenting a new one, a salt shaker, a menu, a sugar bowl. You are always impressed. This place is as tranquil as your first girlfriend's bedroom at university, and when you fall asleep in this cafe, nobody nudges you awake. If you want to eat cake in a place where you can dream, then you wander down the street to a cafe which also serves salty stew and cups of hot chocolate so thick you can almost stand up a spoon in them. This cafe is where you will spend many afternoon hours gazing out of the window and planning new adventures. It is the place where you are sitting, where you hear from a dear friend for the last time, when he sent you a text message from his deathbed to remind you that, on that particular day, you were doing exactly what you're meant to be doing with your life, not worrying about making money or what everyone else was achieving in their careers, just being. If you want to remember Ian, you go and you eat there. If you want to eat cake in a place that reminds you that love is possible, go to that cafe across town where they drown each slice of apple pie in whipped cream, the one whose back room is filled with 70s-style sofas and which is graced with a small cabaret stage. In this cafe, over cake, love twice came close. Or, to feel similar, catch a tram 15 minutes from your flat, where you spent a Sunday afternoon sharing sakatorta with a first date with someone who understood you. If you want cake for its own sake, which of course is reason enough, then go 3 stops down the line for a serving of marzipan moan, its thick speckled layers of sponge dissolving the moment they touch your tongue. If you want cake which rewards your loyalty, then go to the cupcake store nearby, where every week you get a free helping because you are in there so often, and where you were just beginning to build up the courage to ask out the woman you'd seen working there for years, and then she left her job. To eat cake in Berlin properly, never reveal where you eat. If you must, then guard your preferred locations with the jealousy of an insecure lover. If you are feeling a little more generous, then leave hints as to where you've been eating, perhaps the odd photo on social media, so that the keenest detectives among your friends can figure it out. As ridiculous as it seems, not only to you, but eventually to your dentist, cake has become your sanctuary. It is your ritual. Each year, after you've completed your tax return, you catch the underground train to Mitte and you mark the occasion with a dessert that costs no more than €4, a restrained way to celebrate yet another 12 months as a freelancer. Cake punctuates your artistic career. Each mouthful is a milestone. While this town of Berlin offers many escapes, many vices, yours is icing.
feel like I should do an advert for Birds the Bakers now.
Oh my God, yes, Berlin cakes, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you then, because we're in Berlin now with the cake, although, as we know, cake is a universal language.
It is indeed.
Yeah. I was struck reading your different work at your decisiveness. So there's a moment in one of them where you decide, I'm going to Eton, that is the best school. Then you decide, although you want to be a writer, you decide you're going to do the law at university because that makes sense. And then, struck by the rise in racism that you're experiencing in the UK, you make that decision to go to Berlin.
Yeah.
So is that something that has been always... Is it decision making or is it desire, really, I suppose, is the question?
Oh, thanks. Great question. No one's ever asked me that before. I think it's both. Life is short. I have been given opportunities, and I think there's a kind of there's a sense of wanting to make the best of it. You know, at the airport, and you see all those like departure balls, all those cities. What always excites me at the airport is, if I get off the plane, any one of those cities, my entire life could be different. I could meet like a new best friend somewhere. And I think my life from an early age was, and I think informed by the fact my parents are refugees, I have opportunities they didn't. Like my mum came to the UK as a refugee from Uganda, so did my dad. He was a surgeon. He went back and was killed in the war. And there was a sense of, most people in my ethnic group don't have this freedom. So what do I do with this freedom? And so the big decisions I've made are kind of like a tribute to that. If you've been given a chance, so few others have been given, how can you maximize that chance? Which is a kind of burden, but also there's a joy there.
At the end of... sorry, I'm going to be like an English teacher now. At the end of In the End, It Was All About Love, there's a section about running. Oh, not that much of a teacher. I should have put a post-it in it.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
So there's so there's an image as well that's in one of them of your parents passing on the baton to you.
Yeah.
And if you're a child of immigrants, you never stop running.
Right.
Are you still running?
I would say not anymore. I would say the running stopped about 2 years ago when all this work came out. And it was the first time in my life I had to look at myself and go, I think I've now achieved work that would make them proud. And that's an internal conversation. I don't want to get all sort of like psychobabble about what it is to be the child of immigrants. But I think there was a sense of guilt that I hadn't gone and accumulated many millions of pounds as a form of kind of catharsis, because everyone had struggled so much. If I'd gone and made a ton of money, I could have like helped the community out. So for many years, it was like, what have you done that would make your sacrifice worth it? Because most people, my generation, my age mates, my uni mates, if I sat in a room with 25 of my closest mates from uni, I would say 22 of us are multimillionaires. And I'm the only writer, certainly, out of maybe 100 close friends. Everyone else went to the corporate thing. And so the whole time it's like, well, you see people making lives easier financially in the community with the money they've made. And you were in the same classrooms as then. And for me, it was always like, I need to make this worth it. I need to make the artistic journey worth it. So the running stopped 2 years ago when I realized, actually, I think I've now reached a point where I've made my contribution.
That's fantastic. I wanted to touch on wealth as well.
Yeah.
Now, going to Eton, one of them is fantastic. We were talking about this briefly before, weren't we? Because throughout one of them, you're talking about your experience of being at Eton, and you don't name names.
No.
No, but there are some people that we might recognise in there, and you talk about how people have gone into politics and so on. And I read the book and I thought, it's a really good reminder, because where we might get hung up about the difference between the working class and the middle class, actually one of them reminds us that's a bit of a distraction technique.
Yes.
And actually there are people with tremendous inherited wealth around.
So who's read one of them in the audience, my book about Eton's cake? So I had to take a very particular choice about naming names. Now, there were a couple of things going on. So one was The legal issues, yes. But actually, the other one was, we were all 13 when we started at that school. So my thinking was, as children, as a safeguarding issue, people did not sign up for the scrutiny. I did. I signed up for the scrutiny of writing a memoir. I signed up for that at the age of 42. But a lot of people I was at school with did not sign up for that level of scrutiny. I don't know what their mental health issues were. It was a safeguarding thing. I don't know what people would have felt like if they read about themselves 20, 30 years on with their names there. That would have been extremely, I think, emotionally irresponsible. So there was a duty of care to them. Even the ones I didn't like, especially the ones I didn't like, maybe, right? For example, there was one boy in the book who stole a huge amount of money, who was pardoned and kept in the school, who now has like a wonderful career, wonderful life and kids and everything. And to have named him at that point would have been like to drag him back 30 years to the worst point and the worst thing he did to anyone, if that makes sense. So there was a safeguarding issue. The other thing I didn't do to mention names was, this is a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, was that English political discourse is extremely immature. So they love to focus on individuals to get away. They love to turn my book into a kind of slanging match. Oh, he named that person and that person, that person. But if they do that, they'll ignore a conversation about structures and the class system. And someone said to me, oh, you should have named names. And I said, hang on a minute. We've got all the names we need and the government is still there. So the problem's a deeper one. What we need is frameworks. We need structural frameworks. So when people look at the government, they're going, oh, that type of person is that type of person. So I'm giving people, I suppose, the coordinates to frame a conversation about class. Yeah. If that makes sense.
It does work like that. It is a glimpse inside that kind of
I'm so glad. I can name some of those names. I mean, like Rupert Harrison. Right. Rupert Harrison, who wrote the Austerity Manifesto, was the captain of school. And we admired him. And he wrote the austerity policy that has basically ravaged communities across the country. And then wrote a kind of column in the Financial Times saying, oh, Brexit will be a moderate long-term drag on public finances. And I'm like, Rupert, it's not your money.
But you talk in the book about how it's possible for that group of people to completely to be genuinely bewildered when they encounter poverty on their tours of Britain.
No idea.
They've not encountered it.
No. And I scream about this. I'm like, if you people had any idea, not you people, if people had, you get it. I mean, if people had any idea about the level of cluelessness, it's like allowing somebody to fly a jumbo jet having read a textbook about planes. That's the level we're dealing with in the UK in terms of our political leadership. Like, you just cannot get the best leaders from a tiny group of people. You just can't. Like, and if you see, I mean, I say in the book, I said, power should not be passed around a room as casually as a joint on a night out. Everyone goes, oh, Eton is the natural leaders. No, it's like, if you're wealthy enough to go into politics to be an intern, right? It's a self-selecting group. So then, if you go to a school like Eton or like Marlborough, Malvern, you know that someone in your age group is going to end up as a major politician. And that level of complacency is very dangerous for decision-making because there's no consequences.
And what about the idea of shamelessness?
Oh, my God, shamelessness. Oh, the shamelessness of the English upper classes, or a certain part, not all of it, because a lot are motivated by duty and deference, don't get me wrong, but there's a certain section of the English upper classes for whom shamelessness is absolutely a superpower. If you look across all the major democracies at the moment, they're all being corroded and corrupted by shamelessness. And I say this in the book, Eton is not where they were taught shamelessness, but it's where they perfect it. Because a structure like that, the school structure basically rewards shamelessness. It rewards people. If you're an athlete and you hang out with the coaches after games, you're more likely to get picked. When I got elected as a prefect, but to get elected, you basically a lot of the time have to lobby, right? It's like being a Republican. You've got to lobby to get voted for. Then when you get in, you have all these privileges. You have like, your free sports, Sky Sport. Back then it was a big deal. I'm an old man. Like in 1998, we were given a budget as prefects of was it £10,000? It's an astonishing amount of money, an annual budget of £10,000 for life.
Do what?
Well, just to entertain people in your room. We had a special. It was like the throne room in Game of Thrones. This small council. It's like that. The high table. It's like that.
It's a lot of Haribos.
It's a lot of Haribos. Yeah. So the culture of privilege and wealth is such that, and these schools are very insidious because that you don't realise how you're accruing power. So by the time you become a politician, A, you think you're a genius, and B, when everyone goes and says to you, you were told you're a genius from day one. No one ever says that. No one ever says to you at Eton, you're a genius. No one says that. The architecture tells you that because you walk down the street and Henry VI's statue is there. You go into the school and you see George Orwell's books on the wall, so you think you're going to be the next Orwell, Henry VIII, or Henry VI. So it just builds you up, builds you up. And so by the time you get to the age of 18, you've soaked up so much of this through your pores, you feel the entitlement. And that's how it works.
And did you, I mean, you talked about whether you felt as though you belonged or not.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of a way that you're an observer of everything, rather than being right in the centre of it. Sometimes I suggest maybe that's how I've read it.
Yes.
Anyway. Perhaps I'm not right. Yep. Okay. Good. So, what about that sense of belonging then? You stopped running now. Where do you have you gained some of that by moving to Berlin? Do you feel as though you belong to Berlin, or does Berlin belong to you?
I think both. I think Berlin is a place where it's the kind of the final destination for everyone who didn't quite fit in. But I'm not going to lie to you. I understand now, having written one of them, I understand why more people don't speak out, because the act of writing is extremely isolating, because there's the sense of, oh, it's betrayal. You're basically critiquing a world which basically moves silently. Like, how many books about Eton have come out in the last 50 years? I think it's 3. And thousands of people have been to that school, come and gone. Like, I've written that book, and people get in touch from school going, oh, your judgments about our school are quite, we'd like to discuss your judgments. And people are quite stung, because the book praises a lot, but it's not also entirely complimentary. I have found my own community of people eventually, but it's been a lonely journey. And it's made me sympathetic for people that don't speak out, because, you know, we're England, right? We are not an outspoken culture. We're a very deferential culture. We're not as brave as we like to think we are. We're very much like stay inside the tram lines. And I think my artistic journey has taught me to be very compassionate to people who don't feel the courage to speak out.
I was going to touch on the very marvellous Ian Wright.
Oh, yeah. Any Arsenal fans here? Any Gooners? Oh, they've got a couple of Gooners. Always a couple of Gooners.
And I turned on my telly the other day, and you were on the BBC breakfast sofa with Ian Wright having a right giggle.
Yes, he's a great man.
Yeah. So how did all that happen? So there's a book about Raheem Sterling.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And speaking as a Manchester City fan.
Great player.
Marvellous, thank you. And then there's Striking Out, which you co-wrote with Ian Wright. So what happened there? How did that come to pass? So
friendship with Ian. So Twitter has changed my life. Twitter's terrible for many things, but it's changed my life. So a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I was looking at Twitter, and it's like, Ian Wright is now following on Twitter. And I was like, oh, like, okay. Like, he was like childhood hero, right? He was a childhood hero. I'm 42, grew up loving him. As my friend said, Ian Wright was the man. He was the man. Like, not just like as a footballer, but like pop culture, right? So like, I'm like, okay, like, don't write to him immediately, just chill out, be calm. So I wrote to him like 2-3 hours later. I was like, oh, thanks for reading my stuff. It's quite a random mix. And he's like, no, I love it. Keep doing what you're doing. I love your work. So I'm like, whoa, okay, he knows who I am. That's wild. So a few months go past, and we start the Stadio podcast. And I was talking to Ryan, my genius co-producer, producer and co-host. And I said, look, to start the podcast, why don't we see if we can ask the biggest names we know in our networks for interviews? So we asked Ian to come on and discuss the art of finishing, because my whole thing was in football. It's like, football's like architecture. It's like being an electrician. It's a craft. And footballers don't often get interviewed as if they're doing a craft. So we sent this request to Ian through his agent, did all the proper channels. He loved it. Took us to a game, Europa League, Arsenal Victoria, 3-2. Pepe got 2 goals, 2 free kicks. You know the one in the last minute. And we became friends. Which is wild. And so then our podcast, Stadio, gets picked up by Spotify. We get a big deal off them for the next 3 years, which is really exciting, which changes my life financially, which allows me complete freedom. And then Wrighty's House becomes part of The Ringer as well, and then we collaborate with him on that. And then we have a conversation about a book. And that's where Striking Out came from. It's a children's book. And Ian basically said, the first idea was to do a biography of Ian as a children's biography. And then I said, hang on a minute. Everyone knows you, Ian. Why don't we do a children's book which basically tells the story of Ian Wright as he is now, so you at the age of 57, mentoring the next Ian Wright in the age of social media. So how would Ian Wright deal with growing up now in Hackney with a dream? And so the way we did it was we kind of talked out the plot, Becky. We sort of said, okay, I said, look, let's do a hero's journey. Old school hero's journey, rise, fall, rise again, mentor, loss of mentor, old school hero's journey. And then him and I just talked about the journey the kid would go on. And that was, we did a 24 chapter skeleton, 2,000 words in each chapter, because for kids, the attention span has to be very...
Yeah.
And that was it. We just went off.
So did you write it? He plotted it and you wrote it?
We both plotted it and I wrote the bulk of it. But we plotted it together. We discussed the kind of rise and fall and the storyline and like, okay, well, what's his mum going to be like? What's the stepdad going to be like? Similar to yours, but different. So we basically took Ian's Desert Island Discs interview. Who's listened to that Desert Island Discs interview? Right, so each part of Striking Out is named after a song in his Desert Island Discs, and it's themed after it. So the middle part is Crown, which is the Stormzy song, Crown. And the whole point about Crown is Jerome, the kid, basically ascends to the peak, but also has the pressures of being at the top. So Ian and I basically it was almost like a podcast. We talked out the plot. Then I was like, okay, look, we talk out the plot. You're a great storyteller. I can tell stories. Then I'll just fill in the gaps. And that was it.
Oh, I love a book with a playlist.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the book is a Trojan horse, that, because it's a playlist in the book. Yeah.
And what's next, Musa?
I can't reveal what the next project is because I'm working on it. I never discuss stuff until it's a few thousand words in. I'm 2,000 words into a project I'm really excited by. And hopefully, I'll let you know in a few months, but I'm working on it at the moment. I'm really excited by it.
Fabulous. But in the meantime, more Stadio.
More Stadio. Oh, yes. Oh, before I forget. Oh, wish me luck. I got an email literally this afternoon at, I think, let me just get the time of the email. The email arrived at 5:38 p.m. No, 4:57 p.m. The email arrived. We're in conversations to adapt this for TV.
Fantastic.
I'm not sure how we're going to do that because it's it's a very particular, but we're going to try and adapt it for TV. So a TV company's in touch trying to develop it, which is super exciting. Also got a German publisher for this, which is coming out in September. We're trying to get Striking Out adapted for TV as well, which would be amazing.
Fabulous.
So yeah, fingers crossed.
Musa Okwonga, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the great questions.
Oh, no, it's okay. So we're going to have a bit of a break. We're going to have 15 minutes and come back at 8 o'clock. And it's time to hand over to you. So we will be roving with our microphones. And it's time for if you have your own burning questions for Musa, now's the time to think them over.
No questions are off the table. Ask anything. Ask any. This is Reddit in real life. Ask me anything.
Okay.
Anything. Yeah. That's
you don't know what you've just done.
No, go for it. Go for it. Let's test them. Let's test them.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again at 8 o'clock. See you soon. Bye bye.
Becky, great job.
Oh, really?
Great job. Yeah.
back to Rap live here from Metronome in the heart of the city centre of Nottingham. And we're joined with the fabulous Musa Okwonga. In the first half of this evening, we talked a bit about Musa's football writing, about his time with Stadio podcast, what he is doing next, but that's still a closely guarded secret, and his wonderful novels and memoirs. And it's now time to hand over to you. So, fabulous audience members, this is how it's going to work. The marvellous Anne Adams. Shout out to Anne Adams. Is in the audience, lurking in a friendly manner in the corner, ready for your questions. So, who would like to start us off? Any questions? Musa said anything. Nothing is off limits.
I will answer any question. Any questions. Yeah.
Nobody wants to go.
There we go. There's one.
There we go. There's John.
Time as a writer. How does one find the time, but also to finance the time to write?
Amazing question. Okay. So when I was working on my first book, Culture Left Foot, I had a 4-day-a-week job, which I negotiated in order to have the time. So my boss was like, we can't pay you 4 days a week. A full-time job. I said, okay, well, pay me for 4 days. So I negotiated a day less, which not everyone can do, I admit, I understand. So it's basically finding, the key thing is rent. So live somewhere where the rent is affordable. That's an obvious thing. If it means living in like a much smaller town, go to that town and basically cover your rent. In terms of practical time, let's say you've got like a day job or you're studying, there's parts of the day which are kind of like dead parts of the day which you don't normally use. So I would use the commute to work to read books. I had quite a long commute. I tried to read half a football book on the way to I didn't always do it, but I tried to read half a football book on the way to work every day and half on the way back, and then take notes in my lunch break. And I would try to basically carve out a couple of hours for actual pure writing, maybe even an hour and a half. 2 hours is a lot. So I tried to basically take notes throughout the day and then carve out like an hour and a half of time when the phone was completely off to write. Now, let's say I would, in the end it was all about love. I wrote that book. The majority I wrote between 6:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. So that block when my thoughts were fresh. So try and find, I would say, an hour and a half of pure writing time each day. And of course, sympathetic to those who have family lives and other commitments with children. But yeah. So it's about, I think, John, the answer is, it's about taking the sort of 20-minute slivers here and there and adding them up to a concentrated hour and a half a day. You'd be surprised what you can do with an hour and a half a day. You'd be really surprised.
And if you don't make the hour and a half a day, what do you do?
The key thing, I think, is have a notebook or, whatever, smartphone notebook, and just keep jotting ideas down to stay fresh. You only see runners go across town, they're jogging across town. And even the traffic lights, they jog on the spot. A lot of writing is basically jogging on the spot. So you won't get the stretch of time you want. The key is to be efficient even when you're not at your optimal level of like having time. So just jot stuff down. And I say this because that book is jotted down a lot of the time. And you'd be surprised what you can do to a high level even when it's not optimal.
Mm. And it was really interesting that you mentioned reading as well. Mm. What are you reading at the moment?
Okay, there's an amazing novel by Yara Rodriguez Fowler. The name escapes me. It's coming out April. I got sent this advance copy because this is the joy of being a writer. You get sent stuff. That book is going to absolutely knock people's socks off. It's stunning. 2 friends, Brazilian heritage, living in East London. I'll get the name of it, but yeah, Yara Rodriguez Fowler's novel is outstanding. I kind of just read it and just disappeared into it. So yeah, fantastic. That's amazing.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm hogging everybody's question time.
Oh, go for it.
No, who's next?
God, a very, very polite early question. I'm loving it.
Who is your favourite writer?
Oh, wow. At the moment, it's Yara, because she's incredible. It was Elif Shafak last month, amazing writer. who gave us a quote for the new book. Actually, Elif read it and liked it, which is a joy. I'm very proud. He's one of my favorite writers. I love Teju Cole for the essays. It's actually favorite writers, sorry. I like different writers with different things. So turn of phrase, craft, Sylvia Plath. Imagery, William Blake. Brevity, Ernest Hemingway. Humanity, Elif Shafak. Vision, Yara Rodriguez Fowler. Immediacy, Soul, Vinay Patel. Poetry, Toni Morrison. How do I say? Intensity, Kendrick Lamar. So I think that's, so always these different, so like who's a writer, so almost what are the categories, right?
Is that enough writers for you,
yes,
Isabel? Yeah. Have you written them all down, Isabel? Okay, thank you. Any more? Yeah, Josh.
So it makes sense to ask after that question. Could you do a five-a-side team of writers who have most influence on you, and pick them a role in the five-a-side team based on their attributes as a writer?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Of course he can.
Yes, excellent. Listen, now we understand each other. Goalkeeper, Kurt Vonnegut. Just because the custodian of soul and humanity, the reassuring voice, yes, we conceded, but we go again. The defensive midfielder, the one who all the play flows through, I think is still Hemingway. Because a defensive midfielder needs to distribute short, simple sentences, simple passes. So that's 2 down. Then we play with the sweeper. The sweeper would be, I think, Toni Morrison, because you need someone that builds in the back. And I think she had the ultimate vision. She had everything. She had the humanity, she had the brevity, she had the poetry, she could see everything. So that's 3 down. Then you need, I think, so sweeper, defensive midfield, and then you need, like, I think, a maverick. In the maverick, the maverick writer would be early Salman Rushdie. Early Salman Rushdie, because no one, Midnight's Children is just what he wrote at the age of 34, I think, right? He was born in 47. I think he wrote it at the age of 34. That book is lights out, the most astonishing piece of experimental fiction I've ever seen. How he did that, I do not know. I wonder if he knows how he did it. Not because he's not amazing, but well, he's had other challenges since. But that, so Salman Rushdie as the free role. And the number 9, I think, would be, I go investigative journalist Ida B. Wells, who wrote The History of Lynching in the South, The Ultimate Finisher. Listen, if you're a black woman, as an investigative journalist going down to the South with a gun in your handbag to investigate lynchings, you're going with nothing but gun, guts, and vision. You're the ultimate finisher. So Ida B. Wells is the number 9. That team would have anybody on this planet.
In the net every time.
Yeah, that's the one.
Fantastic.
What a question, my God. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
I'll ask one, just while other people are thinking. You said that your book may be commissioned for TV. Who would you like to play the lead role?
Oh, my goodness. Someone no one knows yet. Because there's a real power in narrative, right? I would like the supporting roles to be like, there's a character, Dr. Okwonga. I'd like that to be someone people know, like a Morgan Freeman type character. I would think a Chiwetel Ejiofor. So kind of Chiwetel Ejiofor grow out his hair. He'd be the Dr. Okwonga character, but the main character be an unknown, because I want people to discover the story fresh with the protagonist.
Dr. Okwonga's a therapist, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a therapist.
I was really surprised. So is he a real therapist?
No, he's not. I wanted to write a character who combined spiritual practices that were destroyed by colonialism with a very Western hard therapy angle. So the magic realism is implicit in the book from the opening chapter. So I hint at the magic realism. So when he arrives, I want the narrator to be skeptical of what he can do. And so he goes, I know, look, you're Western educated, you're skeptical, fine, but it's there if you need it. So but he's a fictional character.
And I love that it's one of the character in the book's friends
Yeah.
who recommends Dr. Okwonga.
Mohammed,
Yeah.
Mohammed. So there's a story. So there's another novel I was working on alongside this called The Fire Guardians. And in that novel, which is not published and not written, well, I've written a bit of it, but some of it's on my Instagram, actually. In The Fire Gardens, Mohammed is actually, he becomes invisible to white people, which is a blessing and a curse. So Mohammed basically is so invisible because dark-skinned black people are treated so badly in society a lot of the time that one day he becomes invisible. And he's kind of like Dr. Okwonga's helper who goes around Berlin basically introducing black people who need therapy to Dr. Okwonga.
Thank you. The question? Oh, yeah, fantastic. Go for it.
Hi, Mr. Percy. Thank you for coming.
Oh, great poem, by the way.
Thank you.
Colour, great poem. Loved it.
That's the first time he's performed.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic.
Beautiful, yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it. And yeah, I attended your writing workshop a few weeks
Yeah, I know, I
ago.
remember you. You're an excellent writer. You're an
thank
excellent
you. I
writer.
always love hearing you speak. You always pick out on people's assumptions, even when they don't realise it and things. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said it was quite a lonely process writing the things that you do because you often speak about things that are quite disruptive. And that's something which I feel in my own work because I often like to talk about things which people don't want to talk about, which is probably the reason why it wants to come out. So
Yes.
would you be able to talk a bit more about your experiences of navigating that loneliness and how you've got to a place where you said you feel like you've got your people now?
I would say friendship's the most important thing. Like, the most important thing in my life are my friendships. You know, I talk about everything about love. That's not only romantic love, of course, it's the love of friends. They're the ones that keep me going because... so I got offered a lot of money. I mentioned in the book, I don't tell what the situation was. So I got offered a lot of money by FIFA to write the documentary for the World Cup for 2018. And I was basically like, so this was a point in my life where I needed the money, right? Really needed that money. And the money was really good. It was FIFA. But I was like, this man is bombing hospitals in Syria. Putin is bombing hospitals in Syria. So I had to say no to the money. It's very lonely to say no when you know that that money can change your life. It could buy you a flat. It could whatever. But I was like, it's wrong. And I wasn't earning a lot of money back then. But having the friends I had, and I told 3 of my friends because I wanted them to understand the sacrifice. I said, look, I'm going to say no, but I want you to know that I said no. Just so you know me and you love me as friends, I want you to know how hard this can be because I'm not going to judge people. If you've got a kid, multiple sclerosis, if you've got big medical bills for a family member in a coma, and you take that money, I'm not going to judge you, right? But the barrier for saying no has to be higher than it currently is. So that was the thing. And the things that kept me going with my friends, and it was funny because I told my friend Andrew, who's the captain of the football team that I talk about in the book, and Andrew said, that decision that you made is going to change people because people are going to hear that you did that and it's going to affect us. And the way that he looked at me, him and my mate Sasha's a close friend, I'll be honest with you, they looked at me differently after that day because they were like, everyone talks about activism, but he's like, this guy actually did it. And what I did for me was it started making me look at my entire career and appraise it, not in terms of money I've made, money I turned down. And I started thinking, hang on a minute. You know Cambridge Analytica, do you remember them? They offered me a job in 2007. They offered me a hell of a lot of money, and I said no because it was like, it's the devil. And someone said to me, like, why are you so unhappy? You got offered loads of money. And I said, when the devil comes for you, he offers that much because he knows he's getting in return. And when I started to appraise my career, in terms of my friendships and those who loved and respected me for what I turned down, it changed my whole perspective on, I was like, I'm not a struggling artist, I'm a strong artist because I have the strength to say no, in a position, in a privilege to say no. Don't get me wrong, I'm not rich, I never was, my mum doesn't support me financially, like single parent mum, 5 kids, it's not that, I'm not like a sob story, but you know, that moment of realizing my artistic strength and the ability to disrupt is based on my friendships and their love for the sacrifices I make. That was the turning point, and it's never been the same. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's a really fantastic question.
Yeah, he's smart. His session, can I say, the people that attended my writing workshops and the reading classes, a few of them here, about a handful, they were an absolute joy to work with. It was a real pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, they are an absolute joy. Fantastic. Thank you, Musa.
Whip smart too, yeah.
I just want to say, as an activist, I really like the fact of how you intervene in culture. And how do you get to be the national treasure of England? Because I think Yeah, I know you don't want to go
I'm
there.
not. I'm really not.
It'd be great if you got there, because I look at culture and I think what you're doing is intervening and using football. And when people put people themselves in boxes, they go, I watch football, but I don't read books. And actually what you do is go, there are no divides.
Yes.
What I like is your activism in breaking down ideas of culture being boxes is brilliant, is revolutionary. And I have absolutely enjoyed myself sitting there and watching you take those ideas apart. And I never thought that you could intervene in culture and pull people's stereotypes apart that well. I've really enjoyed
That means everything coming from you, because
really
your poem was amazing.
Well, I think
I like the work you're doing, the libraries is amazing. That means everything coming from you, because you're doing actual grassroots. You're actually pounding the pavements. That from you is huge. It's a huge. No.
Being a stereotype as an activist.
But they do that. They do that to you. You're always going to be a stereotype. They do that to you. No offense, right? The moment they clock someone, no, they're going to do that to you anyway. They do that. They try to do it to me. They try to do it to all of us. They try to pigeonhole you because they try to reduce you to a meme so they can basically marginalize you. And so my entire career, like there's a lot of stuff I get offered. I'm not trying to sound arrogant or flex. It's not that. What I mean is, there's stuff that I don't do, and the stuff that I don't do is more important than the stuff that I do. They try to adapt one of them into TV. We keep turning it down. Oh, adapt it for TV. I said, hang on a minute. If you adapt one of them to TV, Netflix series, what have you done? You've given 95% of the cast will be posh white kids. You've created a whole new industry of posh white kids. You've launched their careers. And there's going to be one or two black people in that entire thing. And all you've done then is reproduce private school narratives. Where's the value in that? Adapt, in the end, it's all about love. Adapt Striking Out, which is working class people in Hackney. Tell those stories. There's enough other stuff. So a lot of it, they'll try and stereotype you the whole time. But that's actually the privilege of it. They try and get me to they invited me to some event the other day, some union debate. I won't name the university out of respect because, my mum raised me well, but still. They were like, oh, we want to debate is a private school that forces for good. I'm like, hang on a minute. Everything I had to say about Eton is in that book. You want to get me on a stage when a few hundred pissed basically pissed toffs, right? And then and perform for you. Go on TV, discuss racism in football, perform for us. No respect, no disrespect to you. You are the absolute, you are what I respect most in an activist. You are doing the work. In fact, I'm humbled that's what you call me, to be honest. I'm humbled that's what you call me. So thank you for your service. I appreciate you.
So just for the people at home, that's a question from Manjit Sahotra from Poets Against Racism. And they've been out today protesting about the closure of 3 Nottingham libraries.
Yeah.
So thank you, Manjit,
Brilliant
for
poet.
the question. Fantastic. Thank you. Any more questions? I'm surprised there aren't more football questions. Oh, there's one at the back.
There we go. There's
there's a football question. Yeah.
Goodness, they can't help themselves.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. Really beautiful discussion. I could see myself a lot in a lot of that. I grew up wanting to be a football journalist, and now I'm an I work in the arts and stuff. So there's a lot of
wonderful.
And Berlin has just changed my life as well. So yeah, there's a lot that I could relate to. So my question is, it's not as creative as the other questions, but it was just about it's a football question. If you could relive any football season, and it could be any league in any country, or even a tournament like the World Cup or whatever, which one would it be? Which year would it be, and why?
1999. Manchester United win the treble. The last game we lose of that season, it was 3-2 to Middlesbrough. Dean Gordon got a couple, I think, at Old Trafford. We lose 3-2 and we win. We go 33 games unbeaten to the end of the season. We win the Champions League. It was my first year at uni. It was a Wednesday night. That was back in the old days, midweek Champions League final, old school. And it was a first floor apartment. I jumped out of the first floor window when Solskjaer scored the winner. And I ran around the yard. It was hammering down with rain. And urban legend has it, a lightning bolt struck the, this didn't happen, but it's the urban myth. There was a fire alarm went off that night, and the urban myth was the lightning bolt had struck it. That's the night. That whole season, because people don't realise what an absolute catfish that season was. We won all 3 trophies, but it was like every single trophy, You had the best teams. You had an incredible Leeds team coming at us in the Premier League, and they came, I think, third. You had that incredible FA Cup run of like Liverpool, had to knock them off. Last game of the season, had to beat Spurs to win the league. That season, 99 season, is one of the greatest, like just a pure adrenaline rush. So yeah, that's the one. Amazing, amazing season. And the football was astonishing too. Yeah. What a question. Oh.
I have to keep my...
Yeah.
I know my husband's just turned off.
No,
Because
but
he's a Manchester City fan.
no, but football, I'm bigger than that. Football's football, right? It's all love, isn't it? It's all love.
This is sort of a football and activism question. We've all watched Marcus Rashford do incredible things over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
How sustainable and how do you think that that's a model that other footballers can follow, or do you think he's a bit of a one-off?
You know what's funny about that England team? They're really special, you know. They're really down to earth. You know what's funny about it? Because they learn. So you have like Jordan Henderson, who a few years ago admits that he wasn't that progressive on certain issues, and now he's welcoming non-binary fans. What's exciting with Rashford is what he's done is very special, and it's an extreme case because it's so focused and engaged. But I think he's empowered a lot of people to do a lot of other stuff that is not as high profile, but it's equally effective. Like Raheem Sterling does a ton of stuff. Community. A lot of footballers do a lot of stuff already, by the way, before I forget. They do a lot of stuff in hospices. You know, stories about Roy Keane of all people. Roy Keane turning up at hospices with football shirts for dying children and sitting with them and just talking. Like, footballers do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, which is why on my podcast I defend them a lot, because they get stereotyped and caricatured a lot. And sometimes if you do too much publicly as a footballer, it affects the perception of you in a way that's negative. And people don't want to be seen as a goody two-shoes. They're like, I'm a footballer. Like Roy Keane did not want to be seen as a goody two-shoes. He did not want to be seen as someone that comforted, which is bizarre to me, but anyway. He did not want to be said as like a nice guy because it's bad for the image, but he's a decent human. He's a decent human, fundamentally. He's got his issues, but he's a decent human. In terms of sustainability, I'm really excited by what this generation of England footballers are going to do. I think they are part of a change that we haven't really seen before. And also, shout out to the women's game in general, who are so progressive. You have like openly gay couples in women's teams. You have basically like players activism against managers for harassment and going, we don't care how good the manager is, get rid of them, they're harassers, abusers. So the women's game in terms of its activism is leading the way in ways that we won't fully realise until maybe 10, 15 years later. But yeah, I'm extremely excited about the possibilities in future.
Hi.
Thank you.
I thought, sort of, as a reader, the way that the book was written in the second prose really sort of elevated the impact that it had on me, especially with like the punch to the stomach and a punch to the gut. I was just wondering if, while writing the book, did it have a particular impact on you? Was it more cathartic? Did it elevate your emotions, or?
I thought, okay, so the technique of writing the book was a bit of a Trojan horse. So I thought, I want people to read the book as if it's just a book about Berlin. So they basically believe it's them. So by the time the punch in the stomach comes, most people reading the book will be white, just demographic, right? They'll be so like, how do I get a white person to experience how the punch feels? I'll introduce, we arrive in Berlin, we find a flat, we meet someone nice on a date, which is a very like universal city experience. And then like, white friends have said to me, or white readers, I'm being racially abused. And it's not me, but it's me now because I'm in it. And that was a technique and a deliberate trick. In terms of how the book felt to write, I tried to write it a bit like, how do I say this? You know that type of chocolate that's like 70% proof? You know, the dark chocolate, right? I wanted the book to be like the reading equivalent of dark chocolate. Short, you don't binge it, you have it in like little squares. So each chapter was a square of dark chocolate. So I'd wake in the morning, I'd think about what to write the night before, the alarm would go off at 6:20, my desk by 6:30, and I'd write till 9 a.m. And everything would be written in a pure concentrate, filtered, like percolated coffee overnight. So yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like it was a catharsis, but a controlled catharsis, if that makes sense.
That's a really great question.
Yeah, lovely question.
We've
Smart
got
crowd.
time for one more final question. Thank you. Oh, are they?
Yeah,
All
we
right,
did, we did.
okay.
With this season in the NBA, with Steph Curry taking over Ray Allen's three-point shot and LeBron kind of encroaching on the all-time scoring, I was wondering if you had a football season which was as statistically interesting for like certain large accolades being broken that you could compare this to at all?
Do you know there was when Messi got 91 goals in a calendar year, because he had to carry. Well, when Messi scores too many goals, it's because the team is failing around him. That was an incredible effort. They didn't win really big that year, but it was incredible what he did. I think the Messi year was pretty wild. We just had one in Germany, Lewandowski breaking Gerd Müller's scoring record. I think he got 40 in a season in the Bundesliga. He might break that, which is wild. He might break that again. But the funny about football and statistics is football isn't actually a game where statistics are as exciting, only because the scoring opportunities in football are fewer. So in basketball, statistics has a primary role. But also, I do love the question. What excites me, I think, most about football is when a team that hasn't won for ages or has pressure to win at the end of a particular journey has to. So, for example, Senegal had to win this African Cup of Nations to really seal their legacy. So what fascinates me is seasons where a team has to win to seal a legacy. I love that. I love that. It's a bit like when Hemingway dropped The Old Man and the Sea. Like, it was so funny because it was like, oh, Hemingway, he's quite good. Then he dropped The Old Man and the Sea. And he got the Nobel like 2 years later. They were like, listen, we've got no further questions. I just love it when a writer just goes, do you know what? I'll deliver that. And it's like when Kendrick drops a classic record. Everyone's like, oh, Kendrick's not the best. And he dropped Damn out of nowhere. Everyone's like, oh my goodness. Everyone's hair fell out. So yeah.
I just wanted to ask, as someone that's kind of starting out quite early in their writing journey, first of all, it's quite inspiring to see how far you've come in your journey. And I kind of wanted to pick your brains a little bit.
Of course, please.
And ask what are your top tips, or what have you received as top tips as a writer?
Okay, so top tips. Here's my top tip of all, right? Do you know what you want to write about?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's been especially interesting sitting here as a person of colour, woman of colour, in the audience, and wanting to be someone that encourages a lot more of that in the industry.
Yes.
I don't know any female black writers personally.
Yes.
To be able to go to and have these types of conversations with. So attending events like this is very, very insightful.
Do you have like social media? Do you use social media? Not everyone does. So I would say Twitter and Instagram. Follow the black writers that you admire. Don't have to have conversations. Just follow them on Twitter. Just read them. Read what they think. Read what they share. So just absorb all of that, right? That's your community. If they come and do a reading on town one day, go to the reading and just soak it up. Go down to London or wherever they go and just soak up. Just that's your community now. You're already a writer. Whether you're a publisher or not, you're already a writer. Because the greatest writers of all time didn't get published till after their death, right? So this being on a bookshelf doesn't mean anything. In the end, It Was All About Love got turned down by all the major publishers for a whole year before Rough Trade got in touch. And now the reviews have been great for it. So you're already a writer. Don't pay attention to other people. You know what you want to write in terms of a concept. Find out your genre that works for you, so where you feel comfortable. Whatever people say, if it's Afrofuturism, do your thing. If it's magic realism, do your thing. If it's like straight first-person narrative, but don't mind other people, right? The most important thing is to get your voice absolutely nailed down, the style that you're happy with. Try stuff out at poetry nights, maybe fragments you're happy sharing. So I did this I went and just keep workshopping stuff. As many online Zoom lectures, not to comment, to build your voice up, just sit and like absorb as much as you can. The final thing I would say is, if you're unsure, if you get a creative block, get a blank notebook, or smartphone, and just for the next 2-3 weeks, just jot down how you're feeling, okay? Not sentences, but individual words. And then look, maybe a couple of like phrases, but nothing like too long, not paragraphs, just a couple of phrases. Do that for the next 3 weeks, and then look back after 3 weeks and print it out or put it on a screen. Circle the themes that occur the most often. That's the core of your writing, right? That's your voice, that's your spirit, that's your soul. That's the basis of the rest of the stuff you're going to write. That's very basic. We'll talk later, but that's where you should start, I think.
We can connect you as well.
Yeah, you can do that too. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I think that brings us to the end of this part of the evening. This event has been hosted by Nottingham Trent University curated and created programme, which includes NTU Music, Boddington Gallery, Rap, Writing and Reading for Pleasure programme, and the University Hall concert series, as well as Metronome and the Great Minds lectures. So it's been a joy to spend this evening here with you. Thank you very much for joining us on the live stream. Thank you very much for joining us here in person. And we're very fortunate because Musa has agreed to sign some books. So we will be moving into the bar area now, where Musa will be for about half an hour. So if you want to carry on the conversation, the bar is open for a while. Please feel free. Thank you very much. Thanks for a lovely evening. Thank you. And thank you for Musa.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.